Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to Snaps. Right now, it is our pleasure here on Snaps to make to be joined by another quarterback, the quarterback Greg McElroy, host of the Always College Football Podcast. Check it out on ESPN's YouTube channel, wherever you get your podcasts. Go ahead and subscribe. That also a host of Mac and Cube on WJOX, huge Alabama radio station over there. They're on there 7 to 10 a.m. Central each and every day. Him and Cade Klubnik. It's a great show. Greg, what's up, man? Thank you so much for joining us on our own college football podcast. Thank you for being here.
That's an appropriate name. I never realized. I was just calling it the T-Bob and Aaron podcast. I wasn't sure it was called Snaps. That's great to know.
Yep.
I love that. First and foremost. Secondly, you'll have to excuse my sweaty appearance. One, I'm never going to be a heartthrob. I don't care. That's not my goal. I want to provide quality information, but when you're sweating like a pig fresh off a workout, it's especially bad. So I apologize for those that are consuming this thing visually.
You don't have to apologize to me, Greg. I like a little sweaty McElroy, actually. And let's dive into it then. Because were you sweating at all that Alabama was maybe going to lose that number one spot to UGA this week? For those who watched Snaps yesterday, I had a little bit of an aggressive reaction. We said, come on, Georgia should be ranked number one. Look at what they did to Oregon. I mean, right, Greg? What's going on?
It would be one thing. Now, if Alabama would have played, anything less than their A game, I think it would have been a real easy argument to make on Georgia's behalf. But Alabama looked really good against a team that won 11 games last year. It's not like Utah State's chopped liver. Now, they're not Oregon, but they might not be as bad as Oregon. Also, at the same time, I say that tongue in cheek. But Utah State's a good football team, or at least they were last year, and they brought back some decent pieces and added a couple in the portal. So it's not like Utah State's chopped liver. Had Alabama gone out and maybe messed around, won like 31-14 or something like that, yes, it would have been a very easy argument to make. And I've said all week long, and I'm sure you guys probably agree with this, tell me who had a better week than Georgia. There's no one. It was clinical. It was surgical. And the areas that I was most concerned of, I thought they'd score points. I wasn't concerned about that. I was actually more impressed with the defense than I was the offense. And I didn't think they skipped a beat, creating turnovers, creating eye violations, and making it difficult on Georgia or on Oregon as soon as they crossed the 50. So they gave them a little room, and it felt like Oregon, hey, we're moving the ball all right. And then boom, it's like they slammed the door. So I think it's a real easy argument to make on Georgia's behalf to be the number one team in the country.
When you look at that 25 and we'll obviously on that number one spot, we're on different sides of the fence there, but 1, 2, whatever, these two will end up playing each other most likely there in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. But any other big surprises? Obviously Michigan moving up pretty good. Florida moving way up into the polls now at number 12. Tennessee moves in. Also, anyone that moved up too much, dropped too far back, or was not included in that top 25?
Michigan moving up 4 spots. I guess I don't have that much of an issue with it, but I mean, it's not like Cade McNamara went out there and went, pulled a Shedeur Sanders and went 17-17 and ball didn't touch the ground. I mean, I thought the offensive performance was fine. I wouldn't say that it was, anything to kind of write home about. If anything, I was more impressed with what they did defensively because I like Colorado State's philosophy offensively, a lot of tempo. Obviously, Jay Norvell making the move over from Nevada. So they were probably going into that game like, hey, I wonder what he's going to do. I wonder what he's going to look like. And they thought they played beautifully on that side of the ball. So I was fine with them being ranked in the top 10 in the preseason, but I would not have moved them up 4 spots upon further evaluation. I don't feel like their performance was that different than that of some of the teams they jumped. I thought Texas A&M was kind of a ho-hum performance. It was fine. Yeah. I thought Clemson's performance in the first 3 quarters was kind of ho-hum, but it's against a quality opponent that's, had the benefit of time on their side. I don't think Georgia Tech's quality, by the way. I just think that they're better than Colorado State and better than, some of the aforementioned teams that they play. Sam Houston State, like A&M played. So I just look at some of these teams, man. I try not to get too reactionary after week 1. I really try, but it's almost like the AP poll. They look at what they did last week. They're like, oh, well, this team didn't play very good. Let's drop them a couple spots. Oh, this team looked pretty good. Let's move them up a couple spots, as opposed from starting from scratch every week, which is ultimately what they should do.
Oh, 100%. I want to stick at T-Bob once. I want to follow up on the Michigan thing. You're a quarterback. and obviously you're a perfect person to ask this question to. It's been a really interesting year to start with some of these situations we're seeing. Obviously, Michigan, one quarterbacks get to start week 1, second quarterback gets to start week 2. I got Ole Miss this weekend. Lane Kiffin's doing the same thing there. As a quarterback, how much would that drive you crazy? And how does that really affect the team and offense and locker room when there is indecision at that spot second week into the season?
I think the players nowadays are more comfortable being uncomfortable with that stuff. I feel like back in the day, we were a little bit more ingrained, and it was more important to know who your quarterback is, know who your leader was going to be. But now every single place just feels very transactional. So, it's like quarterback walks in the door in August, wins the job, and then, oh, he's supposed to be my leader. I just met the guy, but sounds good. We'll follow him. Like, I just don't know if it's the teams just aren't really made up the same as they once were. So I guess it's not as big a deal as I think some might suggest. Ole Miss's situation's a little bit unique because I feel like both Jackson Dart and Altmaier are similar skill sets. It's not like Jackson's the runner and Altmaier's the thrower or vice versa. They both can kind of do both pretty well. And I think both have actually decent upside and there's stuff to kind of build around with that. Ultimately, I think Ole Miss is going to be a run-first team this year, which is exciting. To me, they were last year too, but nobody talked about it. And then as like Michigan's concerned, I can understand their approach a little bit more because it depends a little bit on the game. Like if they're going to just play boa constrictor defense and just squeeze the life out of you, having a game manager at quarterback like Cade McNamara is not the worst thing. But if you need a guy that makes some plays because your defense hasn't played as well, and boom, put J.J. McCarthy in there and let's see what happens. That's why J.J. McCarthy fared better against Georgia in the semifinal game, albeit in mop-up duty. He fared better against Georgia than Cade McNamara did. He's got a little more juice. Also, probably going to make a few more mistakes too. So I think it's okay to have the approach if you're Michigan because it might just depend on who you're playing against as far as which quarterback gives you the best chance.
Well, and speaking of potential quarterback switches, on Monday night, we had a little Clemson Georgia Tech action, and everybody was hyper-analyzing Uiagalelei because, of course, we were, right? If he is good, Clemson immediately kind of re-enters that playoff conversation. He did not look good for much of that game, Greg, and then Klubnik come in. He does well. Seen Dabo make switches in the past. Give us your quarterback evaluation of what you witnessed and if you foresee maybe a switch being in the air at Clemson.
This is so familiar, isn't it? I mean, it feels so much like Kelly Bryant's situation. I mean, It's almost eerily similar where Kelly Bryant didn't really do anything to lose the job. Kelly Bryant really was a very solid player. He took Clemson the previous year as a starting quarterback in 2017. He took him to the playoffs. I mean, it's not like, the guy was undefeated in the regular season. Like Kelly Bryant, he might have lost one in the regular season, 11-1, 12-1, whatever it was. Either way, he took Clemson to the playoffs in 2017. So they were the number 1 overall seed in 2017. I mean, it's not like, he was chopped liver. He didn't have the upside of the backup being Trevor Lawrence. So after 4 games, they're like, Kelly, man, I mean, you're great in the regular season, but we want to win a championship. And right now, the way you're playing, I'm not sure we can win a championship. We can't. Like, you're solid and you're steady and we appreciate you. But this guy right here, Trevor Lawrence, is going to take us to the promised land. So they made the switch after 4 games. And it really wasn't so much about anything that Kelly Bryant did. It was really ultimately just about what Trevor Lawrence could be. And I get the sense that we are kind of starting to find our way down the exact same path. Now, it was very similar to what happened in 2016 when Cole Stout was the starting quarterback for Clemson. Well, there's this little old freshman named Deshaun Watson who's pretty good. And, Cole Stout played good first few games of the year, but he just ultimately his best was not going to be as good as a Deshaun Watson. What's most troubling about this situation is that we've seen DJ Uiagalelei play incredible football. I thought he played really well against Boston College in his first career start. I thought he played excellent on the road at Notre Dame in 2020. So, we've seen him play at a high level, but last year it's like he kind of lost his edge and he just hasn't been able to really recreate that. I also think their offense is a little bit tired. I think it could be a little reinvented with maybe attack the middle of the field a little bit more often. maybe hit some more intermediate throws over the middle of the field as opposed to these one-on-one challenges down the sideline. So I feel like we're approaching a decision point because it was very clear and obvious to me that when Cade Klubnik went in the game the other night, there was a different energy. There was a different sense of urgency, and the team really responded positively to him being in the locker room or him being in the huddle. So I'd be surprised if they continue to accept mediocrity at quarterback there. They just need too much from the position for them to be at their best. And I think there will come a time here at some point in the near future where it will be Klubnik's gig if DJ doesn't improve drastically over the next couple of weeks.
I'm with you on that one. DJ has to get better. He's just the same quarterback we saw last year. Two teams that don't have any issues at the quarterback spot. A game you're covering this weekend, Kentucky at Florida. Anthony Richardson was phenomenal last weekend. I know you're not super high on Will Levis as a quarterback. Looked okay last week. Does Florida win this game? And where are you with Anthony Richardson based on limited playing time we saw last year from him, then obviously his first real start this past week?
First of all, I think we all need to just have like a Snoop cam on T-Bob at all times, because I could just, without even listening to the question, if I just look at his facial expressions, it's like making me chuckle, man. I'm like, he's like, I mean, just out of
very active eyebrows, Greg.
Very
active.
active.
They have a life of their own, dude. What a good
I love it.
It's a good question.
Right,
so you rub your chin, you're like, oh, okay now.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like we're getting all kinds of good stuff there. I mean, it's like it's like facial expression comedy.
Just combing the food out of his beard from lunch.
Quarterbacks this weekend in Gainesville. I think, first of all, I like Will Levis better than I thought I did. Going upon further evaluation, I look at the pre-draft stuff, the first round mock draft stuff. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, no way. I mean, come on, man. First round, like maybe we need a double let's just slow our roll here a little bit on this guy. Then went back and watched a little bit more. I was like, okay, I see the athletic ability. I see the potential. I still think, and if you talk to their coaches, they believe that he is insanely accurate. I, for one, have seen him miss a couple layups. It's okay. It happens, especially early in the season. But if you're going to be a first-round pick, top 10 pick potentially, top 2 pick potentially, you can't miss layups. You have to be able to place the football in the right place at all times. And if you're throwing to a running back, you can't throw a 105-mile-an-hour fastball on his back hip. It's going to get tipped up, and it might be a big problem, a big bad play, potentially intercepted, maybe going back the other way. Who knows? So I think he can tighten up the accuracy just a little bit. I would also like to see him practice a little more self-preservation. I think he's got some grinder in him in a sense that, like, he refuses to go down. Got some Roethlisberger in him in that regard, but Roethlisberger was 6'6", 250, and could just throw defensive tackles off of him like it was nothing. He needs to, I think, understand when the defense wins, hey, man, let's just live to play the next play. I'd like to see him grow in that regard. But really going back and watching him, I was very impressed with how effortless he throws the football. When his feet are underneath him, he is deadly accurate. The ball really jumps off his hand. He just has a lot of raw horsepower. You know what I mean? So I can understand very much why the NFL is starting to salivate over him. He's got to tweak and refine a few things, but for the most part, it's in there. As far as the other guy is concerned, Anthony Richardson, this dude is ridiculous. The best part is it's like he's like a young fawn. Like he doesn't understand rhythm. Like he doesn't understand quite yet how to just kind of play the game and let the game come to him. He just is out there making plays, and he's the best player on the field at all times. And it's amazing to me. And I've compared him all week long, and I'm sitting there watching it with Joe Tessitore, and Tess. I mean, Tess is like, oh my God, Greg, that's a phenomenal comp. Like he's like, he loves it. But we're sitting there watching the game last week. I'm like, dude, he moves like Vince Young. I mean, just watch him. Now, I grew up with Vince Young. Like, I'm from Dallas, went to Texas games, was a Texas fan growing up. Vince Young, one of my favorite players of all time. He got to college in like 2002. I was in ninth grade. So like I grew up with Vince Young, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, like wanted to go to Texas, loved Vince Young. So he was like a very important player in my childhood. And I can remember watching him mature from one year to the next year, to the next year, to the next year. And that final year when he won the Rose Bowl, him being a complete finished product was an amazing thing to watch. But if you watched him as a sophomore, he made plays that just would blow your mind, but he didn't make the average plays from time to time. That's where I think Anthony Richardson can grow, is that he can certainly make all the superstar plays, all the highlight reel plays, but he also will throw a slant and miss the guy by 5 yards. So he just needs to make the average plays. He can make them easily. Just the focus on those plays needs to be the same way it is when he's scrambling and creating. So, but he's phenomenal, and it is really a joy to watch. And I think both these two guys have very bright futures at the position.
Wait, so is Tess's same energy level on there? Is that him off air as well? In these production meetings,
like
and
when
everything?
it comes to food and wine and tequila, like,
Tequila,
like I'm not maybe
tequila,
reverse
tequila.
order. Like those are the three things.
Mr.
And antipasto, like he's an Italian American. Like he will, like he is very proud of his Italian American heritage, and he's very easy to wind up. He runs hot, he runs hot, and he wants to be and live in conflict, and he really believes that if the sport, like he loves boxing and football, because he says that if it's not like a gladiator type of sport, he wants nothing to do with it. Like hates golf, thinks golf is the softest sport ever. And I'm a golfer. Like
Wow.
I love to play golf.
What an
And
alpha.
he thinks golf is the softest, weakest sport of all time. And the reason why is like, why is it courageous to pull out a metal club, hit a white ball, and play against grass? Like you're quite literally playing against grass and air. And you're saying it takes courage to pull the club back? Like, and that, I kind of resonate with that, but he is intense.
Which is surprising a little bit though, because of all the sports, that would probably be the one that he would excel at over boxing or football.
Wow,
No,
dude.
like,
What, you can't appreciate
people,
something from the outside looking in, dude? You shaming Joe
saying,
Tess
all
for not
people
being
that have
big
like
enough?
grown up around like boxing, like he'll tell stories about like Sylvester Stallone and stuff like that. Like people like the boxing community is a very small, tight-knit community. Like every single person that's involved in boxing, it doesn't matter if you're a promoter, a play-by-play guy, or you're, selling beer as a guy that's walking up and down, as a vendor. Like everyone that's around boxing thinks they can go in the ring and fight for 12 rounds against heavyweight boxers. Like they all just have a crazy barbaric sense of fight. Like I'm going to fight and I'm going to win. Tess still takes boxing lessons. He leaned up last year and he kept calling himself a featherweight. I go, Tess, you're skinny. You're not a featherweight. You're skinny. All right. Gain some weight. You're not competing. You don't have to weigh in tomorrow. You're not going nose to nose with a guy and, going to throw hands. Like just, eat first of all. Second of all, you don't need to work out 3 hours a day and jump rope. Last week in the hotel before the game, he jumped rope for an hour and a half. Who jumps rope for an hour and a half as a workout?
Good for him.
A fucking grinder. Hey, put Joe T in the ring and let them gloves sing, baby. Let's do it. Greg, we've already kept you so long. 30 seconds. How badly does Alabama beat Texas this weekend?
What I'm most interested in, I don't think Texas has the horses, first and foremost. But I think they have the intellect. And I'm not sure I'm, breaking any news and saying that Steve Sarkisian's one of the best offensive minds in college football. So what I'm most interested in is how does he put a plan together to try to limit the pass rush, to try to create favorable matchups. What does Texas's offensive plan look like? Because if he can provide the blueprint and that he's been working on this plan for 18 months and knowing that this is a huge opportunity, they get blown out like, say, Oregon did against Georgia. You get blown out like that. What's everyone going to be saying about Steve Sarkisian? Oh, he's lost his magic. The guy's not that good. Like, it's all going downhill. Like, the honeymoon is over. Like, the reaction will be really strong if this game gets sideways. So I don't think he has the horses to pull off the upset, but I do think he can provide the blueprint to someone that might actually have the horses down the road. Like, I think people will copy this game plan over and over and over and over again because Steve Sarkisian's clearly very well respected and very, very thoughtful. So can Arkansas replicate this plan and create some problems for Alabama? Can LSU down the road, if they improve drastically between now and then, can they maybe make life difficult by implementing a plan similar to the one that Texas is going to use? What about Texas A&M? Can Texas A&M use a plan that's similar to what Texas is going to use? So all three of those teams probably have slightly better personnel than Texas, which means they would be more equipped to pull off the upset. But I do think Texas might provide, a look into how you should attack Alabama and how you should neutralize their edge presence defensively.
Greg McElroy, host of the Always College Football Podcast. Check it out on ESPN's YouTube channel, wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe and listen to Mac and Cube, 7 to 10 a.m. on WJOX over there in Alabama. Greg, thank you so much, man. You have a great day, my friend. Enjoy the call on Saturday. It's going to be sick in the swamp.
All right, fellas. Y'all have a great time.